Alright guys, 15.2, got repeat of 14.2. So we've got a 3-minute clock, 10 overhead squats, 10 chest to bar pull-ups, 2 rounds of that, rest the remaining of the 3 minutes, and then start over with 12s, ascending by 2 reps every 2 rounds on a 3-minute clock as high as possible. So hopefully a lot of you have done this before. Hopefully you've been practicing your chest to bar pull-ups, practicing your pacing on that. And you're comfortable with the overhead squat. All that being said, we'll talk about some of the baseline stuff, nutrition. First off, you want to be as light as possible. This workout is made or lost on the pull-ups, not the overhead squats for 99% of the population out there. So you want to be as light as possible so those chest bar pull-ups feel as light as possible. It's okay to be hungry going into this workout. If you're a little bit hungry, you don't have anything sitting in your gut, that means all the blood's going to be flowing to your limbs, your legs, and your arms. And again, you're going to be lighter. You're going to want to attack a little bit more. That's when you're in that flight or fight mode. So it's okay to be a little bit hungry. Maybe a little bit of BCAAs, a small bit of stimulant, not a whole lot of caffeine or anything. You don't want to get that pump. So that forearm pump, lats pump, you don't want to get that. So you don't want too much of a kind of a normal pre-workout supplement. A lot of it's going to have some of those stimulants in there that kind of give you that pump. That's kind of what they're marketed for. So you don't want to have that. So maybe just a little bit of caffeine and some BCAAs. Probably a good bit, still a good bit before your workout. Again, you don't want it to be too much. Get too jazzed up for this. 2 to 3 hours before your workout is when your last meal should be, or maybe an hour and a half or 2 if it's a real small snack, if that's kind of more what you're used to. But it shouldn't be a big full meal. You don't need to carb up for this meal. You don't need to have too much fat. You don't need to have too much protein for this meal. You're not doing a strength lift afterwards. Again, this workout's all about being light and moving efficiently. So you don't need a ton of carbs. You don't need a bunch of glycogen. 2 to 3 hours before your workout should be good to go. And then that should be it for your fueling. Normal breakfast and things like that. You want it to be in a semi-fasted state. If you're used to training first thing in the morning in a fasted state, this would be a great workout to do in a fasted state. If you're not used to that, then you want to be in a semi-fasted state, which just means you ate normal breakfast and then you had a couple hours before you got into the workout. Your warm-up, again, 5 to 7 minutes of aerobic work at least. You want to have a good sweat going. This can be on the rower, the bike, the aerodyne, kind of our typical 5 to 7 minute aerobic work. Your rep schemes during the warm-ups, when you get into the specific movement prep, obviously I didn't list here, but you want to do your essential work that you need to get in a good overhead squat position, good chest to bar pull-ups, getting the elbows behind you. You need to do your mobility work that's specific to you that helps you get into those positions. But the rep schemes for that, specifically the overhead squats and the chest to bar pull-ups, kind of depends on you. If you're an athlete who is really efficient at chest to bar pull-ups, you want to get a few sets of those in, 5 or 6 reps of those in. Make sure it feels good, make sure your rhythm's on, make sure you feel light and fast on those. If you're somebody that struggles with chest to bar pull-ups and 5 is like a fairly taxing set, or you can't even do 5, then you don't want to do many. Maybe want to do 1 or 2 in your warm-up just to make sure they're there for the day, but you don't want to do any. That's going to be a strength fatigue thing, and you don't want to wear that movement out if you're not efficient at it. So save those for the workout. Like I said, do 1 or 2 of them, a couple of them, just to make sure they're there. Other than that, we don't want to wear that movement out. You do want to, make sure your scaps and your back and your the big muscles in your back that help get that chest up to the bar. So that last little range of motion when you're doing that pull-up is not the same as just a regular pull-up. You want to make sure those shoulders are good and warmed up. The mobility is good and warmed up, so it's easier to get your chest to the bar, and your scaps are warmed up, easier to work on that. So whether you're used to doing iron scap type warm up, what I like to do for something like this is just like scap pull-ups where you're hanging from the dead hang bar and just pulling the scaps back. Again, warm those up. Maybe single arm rows or ring rows, focusing on squeezing the shoulder blades behind you. Again, you don't want to do too much of this to fatigue it out, but you do want to wake it up and get it moving and get ready for those chest to bar pull-ups. And then after your specific movement prep, you want to get that heart rate up a little bit more. You're going to get into pretty high work to rest ratio. So you're going to be working for a pretty substantial amount of time and then not very much rest fairly quickly. Maybe not at first if you're more efficient at these movements, but eventually you're going to get into that where you don't have very much rest, so the heart rate's going to get up pretty high eventually. So you kind of want to practice that heart rate early on. So get some cyclical work in, maybe 30 seconds of work at a pretty high turnover, not all out or anything, pretty high turnover, and then 20-30 seconds of rest. Maybe 2 or 3 sets of that to work on that breathing, get that heart rate up, get that breathing rate up so it doesn't freak you out when you get into that scenario. Don't let the high heart rate freak you out again. Just go with it, accept it, and breathe higher with it. Make sure you're breathing out just as much as you're breathing in, breathing through that belly to keep that blood flow pumping and to keep yourself under control. High heart rate doesn't mean you have to stop. It just means you're breathing high, and that's the respiratory rate that we want on a workout like this. So straight into that pacing strategy, breathing. Those first, depending on how efficient you are again, the first round or two, or the first 3-minute block or two, your breathing might not get very high. If it's paced right, it shouldn't get very high, but it eventually will get high, so accept that. You may want to try to keep it calm in those early sets just to delay that, but know that it's going to get high and be ready for that and go for it. So pull-ups, again, I'm a big fan of pacing it a lot from the start. So chest-to-bar pull-ups are more of a strength of mine than other movements. So I know last year when I did this workout, I did much better on it when I paced it even more from the front end than I thought. So I think the first time I did it, I did 5 and 5, and then maybe 6 and 6. And then the second time, I'm pretty sure I did 4, 3, 3 from the start, and never did set a bigger than 3 until I got deep in there and I really had to fight for it in that 16, that round of 16 and 18s is when I had to really start digging. Every time you drop off the bar, as soon as you hit your chest hits the bar, completely drop off the bar, that's going to save you that eccentric load, and you're not getting that fatigue and that eccentric load. So what that's doing from the start is saving those eccentric reps, which is the most taxing part of it. So you want to go ahead and pace it from the front end, and don't do so many unbroken sets when you don't have to. To get those 10 done in the first 3 minutes is not super challenging for most people. So, or for most of the, if you're expecting to get into the 14, 16s or farther, getting it time is not going to be an issue. So break them up from the front end. You'll have plenty of time. If you think of it like 400-meter repeats on a 3-minute clock, you don't want to run a max effort 3-minute, or you don't want to run a max effort 400 meters and then rest 2 minutes or so. You'd rather run a little bit slower, maybe 1.5 minutes, and then get a 1.5 minutes of rest so your heart rate never jacks up. You don't want to tip over that red line too early and never be able to recover from it. So pace from the front end, I would say 5s at the most, never going above 5 until you absolutely have to, and then you're able to have that in the tank, where if you start off with 10s, you may need to get a sets of 5 in later on in the workout to get that, break that 3-minute mark, and you just don't have it in you. You can only do 1 at a time, and at that point you've lost the workout. So pace on the front end. Grip width on the pull-up bar and the overhead squat, I would say vary it up. A lot of people grip both of these in the same position, which is going to be putting the same pressure on the shoulders. So you want to try to change that. Maybe start narrow on the pull-ups or start narrow on the overhead squat. I would generally err on the narrower side on the overhead squat and the wider side on the chest-to-bar pull-ups though. If you have the mobility, go pretty narrow on the overhead squats. It's going to add a lot more stability, and you'll be able to move through that with a lot more control. The pull-ups is going to shorten that range of motion if you go wider, so go a little bit wider on that if you're comfortable. Again, you don't want to change too much from what you're used to. If you're comfortable with reversing that grip, doing 1 overhand, 1 underhand, go for it. That'll help the forearms a little bit. I never do that in training, so I'm not going to do it. I would say start with, if you do that, I would say start with the most uncomfortable grip when you're fresh. You know you're not going to have trouble getting them, and then go towards your more comfortable grip. Shoes, it depends on how comfortable you are in the overhead squat. It's not a super heavy weight, but if you need weightlifting shoes to make this comfortable, then wear weightlifting shoes. If not, I wouldn't worry about them. It's not a heavy enough weight. Grips, wear your normal grips. You definitely want to protect your hands in this workout if you're used to it. Again, it's not something you want to try the first time on this workout. I don't wear grips in training, so I'm not going to wear them in the workout. But if you're used to wearing them, or if you're comfortable wearing them, then definitely wear them in this group. You're going to be doing a lot of pull-ups. Cool down, flush out, 10 or 15 minutes easy on the bike. Get the legs flowing, make sure your arms are moving too. The lats are going to get fatigued, or the lats are going to be pretty smoked after this. The quads are going to be pretty smoked after this. So do some mobility work on the lats with the foam roller, some quad work, and then some stretching afterwards. And make sure you get plenty of protein and carbs in after this workout. It's going to be a pretty taxing workout. So if you're wanting to possibly redo this one, you're definitely going to want to get your fueling in right after the workout. So after you flush and cool down a little bit, again, you don't want to drink your shake immediately after finishing. You're not going to digest it very well. Let yourself cool down, let yourself flush out, and then make sure you get that protein in. 30 grams or so of protein, depending on what you're used to, 60 or so grams of carbs, just from a very broad general prescription. Depends on the person, but just a general rule of thumb. So that's a general overview of 15.2. Good luck and have fun with it.